There is a valley tucked between the mountains and the sea, half forgotten by the wider world, where the seasons still matter and the days move at a pace that the modern age has all but abandoned. Pelican Town sits in the heart of this valley, modest and unhurried, its handful of streets lined with homes that have been lived in long enough to bear the particular character of the people inside them. If you were to arrive there one morning, stepping off a bus that shudders to a stop at the edge of the forest, and simply walk through that town, you would catch only glimpses. A light on in a carpenter's workshop before the sun is fully up, the distant murmur of a barkeep opening shutters, the sound of guitar strings drifting from a bedroom window, a man with a fishing rod working his way down a footpath toward the docks in the pre-dawn grey. The town seems at first to be a collection of surfaces, but surfaces are always the beginning, and what lies beneath them is what makes Pelican Town worth knowing. Every person who lives here carries a history. Some carry it openly, in the stories they tell without much prompting. Others carry it quietly, tucked into the corners of their routines, revealed only in moments they did not mean to share. The goal tonight is not to catalogue these people. It is to understand them, one by one, as they actually are. To walk through their lives the way one walks through a town at dusk, without hurrying, letting each doorway open at its own pace. There is no rush. The valley does not rush. And if you let the rhythm of this place settle into you the way it settles into everyone who stays long enough, you will find that each story here is worth the time it takes to tell it. In the southern quarter of Pelican Town, on the beach where the tide turns and the fishing boats creak against their moorings, there is a cabin. It is a small thing weathered by salt air, sitting close enough to the water that on stormy nights the sound of the waves must fill every corner of it. The cabin belongs to a man named Elliot. He came to this place from elsewhere, a city or a town where the noise of daily life left him feeling as though his thoughts could not fully form, where the distance between himself and the thing he wanted to make was always crowded with distraction, and he came with a single, clear intention: to write a novel. That was the whole of the plan, not a comfortable plan, not a practical one, but an honest one, and Elliot has always preferred honesty to comfort. There was something almost old-fashioned in the decision to remove himself from the environment that was failing him and place himself somewhere that might not, and he made that decision with his eyes open and his savings dwindling and his notebook already half filled with false starts. He lives alone. His cabin holds a writing desk and a piano, and these two objects tell you almost everything you need to know about the way he moves through the world. He writes in longhand, with the kind of deliberateness that suggests he knows a sentence is a small commitment, and that a paragraph is a larger one, and that a novel is something a person must mean, truly mean, before they can finish it. He plays the piano not as a performance, but as a means of thinking. When the words stop coming, he finds his way back to them through music, through the particular sensation of one thing resolved into another. He gets stuck. This is worth saying plainly. He doubts himself in the way that any writer who is truly invested in their work must occasionally doubt themselves, and his doubt tends toward the operatic, toward complete reassessments of the project and his place within it. But he does not stop. Walking the beach in the morning, watching the way light changes on the water, talking with Willie the fisherman who runs the shop nearby and has the easy, unhurried manner of someone who does not think silence needs to be filled. These are not distractions from the work. They are the work. Eliot's novel becomes whatever the valley teaches him, genre and all. He asks early on a simple question: what kind of story do you want to read? And the answer you give him shapes the kind of writer he becomes. There is something romantic in how he speaks, a tendency toward ornamentation that some people find endearing and others find excessive. He notices it himself sometimes, and for a moment there is something almost shy behind the flourishes, a man who has become so skilled at the beautiful form of a sentence that he occasionally wonders whether the beauty is serving the content or replacing it. He is a person who came to a small town because he needed quiet, and found to his surprise that quiet was not what he needed most. What he needed was to be known, to move through a community that was small enough to remember his face, and large enough to offer genuine encounter. He finds it here, by the water. His novel gets written, it gets published eventually, and the version of himself that exists in the valley by the time that happens is quietly different from the man who first stepped off a bus and walked down to a salt-worn cabin with a notebook under his arm and a hope he had not yet earned. A little further along the beach, where the docks extend out into the gem sea on wooden pilings that have seen many winters, a man named Willie spends most of his mornings. He is the town's fisherman, the only one really in any professional sense, and he runs the fish shop at the far end of the dock with the unhurried authority of a man who has never doubted that what he does is worthwhile. The shop is modest, rods and bait, and the catch of the season, arranged without ceremony. Willie is not interested in ceremony. He is interested in the water. He grew up travelling among the Fern Islands, moving between coastlines with the particular freedom of someone who learned early that the world is larger than any one place suggests. He learned the sea the way some people learn a language, not through study but through immersion, through necessity, through the accumulated education of years spent in genuine relationship with something vast and indifferent and endlessly instructive. The sea became his frame of reference for everything. Distance is measured in hours of open water. Patience is measured in the length of a line and the silence between pulls. He ended up in Pelican Town the way people often end up in quiet places, drawn there by something he could not entirely articulate, and finding, once he arrived, that the place fit him well enough that leaving stopped being a thought he entertained. There is a kind of peace in that, the decision that this is where you are, not as resignation but as arrival, as the conclusion of a long search that has finally landed on its answer. He is generous in his particular way, the fisherman's way, which means sharing knowledge freely, gifting rods to those who seem ready and bait to those who seem patient, offering the kind of casual expertise that makes the craft seem approachable, even when it requires years to master. He is not a man of elaborate conversation, but he is a man whose company feels easy, and there is a particular comfort in the presence of someone who has long since made peace with the rhythms of the natural world. He attends the Stardrop Saloon in the evenings, where he and Elliot sometimes sit near each other without needing to say very much. This is its own kind of friendship. The Stardrop Saloon sits at the centre of Pelican Town, in the way that communal gathering places always do in small towns. Not just as a place to drink, but as the hearth of the community, the room where the social temperature of the place can be felt most accurately. The food is good. The music varies, depending on the night and who happens to be playing, but mostly it's owned and operated and defined by Gus, who is one of those rare people for whom hospitality is not a job but a vocation, a calling he did not choose so much as recognize in himself when he was still young, and has been answering ever since. He is a large man, warm in the way of people who have given genuine thought to how they want others to feel in their presence. He cooks most of what he serves. He keeps careful mental notes of who takes their drinks a certain way and who needs more time before they're ready to talk, and who, after enough visits, has stopped ordering and simply sits, and for whom sitting itself is enough. He is the confidant of half the town because people trust him not with a choice but with an instinct. The particular readiness with which he receives whatever they are ready to say. He accepts it without judgment and without repetition. He is not collecting anyone's secrets. He simply does not turn away what people need to say, and the distinction matters. He worries. He worries about the community in the steady, ongoing way that a person worries about something they are responsible for and love and cannot fully protect. When JojaMart opened its doors at the edge of town and began drawing customers away from Pierre's general store and Willie's fish shop, and the other small establishments that Pelican Town depends upon, not just economically, but socially, architecturally, as reasons to walk down specific streets and stop and talk with specific people, Gus felt the shift, not just in the visible ledger of it, the slower evenings and the quieter afternoons, but in something harder to name, the fabric of the place, the way that commerce in a town this size is also conversation, is also community, is the reason people have for being in each other's company most days of the week. He holds that thread carefully, knowing what it is worth, knowing that it can be pulled too thin. Pierre runs the general store that opens in the morning and closes by 5, and he takes some pride in it, possibly more pride than the store itself by any regional comparison strictly warrants. His pride in it is the pride of ownership in the deepest sense, not just of property but of identity. This store is what he built, what he tends, what he has organised his life around, and its success or failure means something personal to him that goes beyond money. He is a practical man, attentive to the business of keeping a family fed and a community supplied with seeds and tools and the modest goods of daily life. And he is generally well-meaning, even when his well-meaning shades into something more controlling. He and Abigail, his daughter, have spent most of her life in a careful disagreement, she pulling toward the edges of things, and he pulling toward the centre, she interested in darkness and strangeness and exploration, and he interested in normalcy, in the kind of life that proceeds along familiar rails without incident. He loves her. He does not always understand her. These two facts coexist in him without apparent resolution. His relationship with his wife, Caroline, has a quietness to it that is not entirely comfortable. There are things in their marriage that have not been resolved, and both of them seem to have made a kind of accommodation with that fact, building their shared life in the space around what is unspoken rather than through it. He is not a cruel man. He is a man who's arranged himself round whatever he needs not to know, and who keeps himself busy enough that the things he is not examining rarely surface in any form that demands a response. He tends the store, he manages the orders, he worries about JojaMart, he watches his daughter with an expression that is part bewilderment and part love, and does not seem to know how to add those things together into something usable. Caroline spends much of her days in the general store or in the small sunroom she has cultivated in the back of the house, where she grows tea bushes with a focused, private attention that seems separate from the rest of her life, belongs only to her, cannot be claimed or asked about or used by anyone else. The sunroom is hers in a way that nothing else in the house quite is. There is something in the way she moves through her daily life that suggests she has, at some point, chosen ease over honesty, chosen the life that was available over some other life that was not, and she has built a life that is mostly livable within that choice. She is friendly in the way that people are friendly when they have learned not to need too much from their interactions, when they have taken the social contract at face value and found that face value, while limited, is at least reliable. She loves her daughter, in her own particular way, in the way that parents love children whose wildness both frightens and secretly relieves them. Abigail, in her purple-haired obstinacy, is free from something that Caroline is not, and whatever Caroline feels about that, whether it is pride or envy or simply recognition, she holds privately in the sunroom among the tea. The Wizard's Tower stands at the edge of Cindersap Forest, at the end of a path that most people in the valley have never thought to walk down. It is a tall, narrow structure, ancient-looking, the sort of building that seems to have always been there and might always be, regardless of what happens around it. The man who lives inside it is known only as Rasmodius. He has been in the valley longer than most of the current residents have been alive. He is a man of genuine and considerable magical ability, of elaborate language and elaborate manner, possessed of a past that he holds close, because most of it involves things he would need to explain too much to share. He mentions in certain quiet moments that he believes one of the town's inhabitants might be his daughter. He says it carefully, not as a claim but as a possibility, weighted with the kind of awareness that comes from understanding exactly what a statement like that carries, who it implicates, what it disrupts, how many people's understandings of their own lives it rewrites. He says it, and he does not press it. He is a man who has learned, probably from hard experience, that some things are better held as questions. He was once married to the woman the valley calls the Witch, a sorceress who lives now in a hut behind the railroad tracks, separated from Pelican Town by a stretch of wild, unused land, and by the particular geography of a marriage that ended badly. The wizard speaks of their marriage only obliquely, acknowledging that something he did ended it, that there was a mistake, that the mistake cost him dearly and cost her something she has not yet found a way to put down. Whatever the nature of that mistake, and certain details, certain patterns of conversation in the valley suggest possible answers that the game itself is careful never to confirm. His wife was consumed by it. The stories say she turned green, that she took to the air, that she began flying above the countryside, casting curses at people who had nothing to do with her particular grief, which is what grief does when it becomes large enough and finds no other outlet. She stole his magic ink before she left, a pointed theft, seizing the tool of his power, the substance of his craft. She took it because it was valuable to him, and taking valuable things is one of the logics of departure. The two of them exist now in distant proximity, on the same map, in the same landscape, with the whole weight of whatever their marriage was and whatever ended it hanging between them, neither fully resolved and neither entirely gone. On occasion she flies over the valley on her broomstick and casts spells on things, turning eggs into void eggs, leaving the mark of her presence in ways that are disruptive without being quite destructive. She still knows how to reach him. She has simply chosen a different mode of communication. Abigail is not quite what she seems. She presents as a young woman in rebellion, purple hair that she says she dyed years ago, and that has never faded in the way that dyed hair fades, which is one of those small, strange details that Pelican Town places in front of you without comment, a real and specific affection for the supernatural, not as an aesthetic but as a genuine area of interest. A habit of sitting in the graveyard in the evenings that strikes her father as alarming, and her mother as mildly embarrassing, and which, as far as Abigail is concerned, is simply a comfortable place to read. But underneath what reads as rebellion, there is something earnest. She is genuinely curious about dark and strange things, not performatively, but with the kind of interest that suggests she has always felt slightly out of step with ordinary expectations, and has decided that being out of step is not the worst thing to be. That in fact, being out of step might be the thing that keeps her honest. that keeps her from flattening herself into a shape that fits a life she was never going to fit. She is adventurous in the truest sense of the word, meaning that she is drawn toward the unknown, not because it is fashionable, but because she would be bored and diminished without it. She talks about going into the mines, the deep mines, to fight the things that live there, with a specificity and enthusiasm that suggests this is not fantasy but plan. She is the drummer in a band with Sam on guitar and Sebastian on whatever else the band requires of him, and this friendship, this trio, is one of the more real things in the valley. Formed by proximity, by the particular desperation of young people in small towns who need someone to be young with, it has become, by the time we encounter it, something genuine. Her father wants her to be different than she is. He wants, with the anxious love of a man who does not have a vocabulary for what his daughter actually is, for her to be someone whose choices he can understand and be proud of in conventional ways. She loves him anyway, in the complicated way that children love parents who do not quite understand them, with patience and residual tenderness, and the private knowledge that being loved badly is still being loved. Her purple hair, she says, she died long ago, and it never faded. This is the fact she offers when people ask. Whether one takes it at face value, or holds it alongside the wizard's quiet suggestion that somewhere in this town is a child of his, and whether those two things are related is each person's own affair. The valley does not force its conclusions. The friendship between Abigail, Sam and Sebastian is one of those that formed in the particular way of small-town friendships, out of proximity and limited options, and then, gradually, out of genuine affection that has outlasted the conditions that first created it. Sam is the one who keeps the energy moving. He plays guitar, talks too loudly, skateboards through streets that are not really designed for it, eats pizza at quantities that seem to exceed reasonable physical limits, and makes everyone around him slightly more awake than they intended to be. He is, in the taxonomy of people, the kind of person who makes you feel like things are possible, not through persuasion, but through sheer metabolic enthusiasm that treats every afternoon as something worth using. His father, Kent, was away at war for years. The Ferngill Republic, the nation in which Pelican Town sits, has been in protracted conflict with the Gotoro Empire, a distant power that lies south of the Gem Sea, the body of water that borders the beach at the edge of town, that Willie fishes and Elliot watches, and that the travelling cart merchant mentions as the origin of certain smuggled goods. Kent was not simply deployed. He was captured. He spent time as a prisoner of war in a Gotoro prison camp, and the things he experienced there did not leave when he left. He came back to Pelican Town in the second year of the farmer's time in the valley, after his family had found a new equilibrium in his absence. Difficult, sometimes lonely, but functional, and the work of being a family again, of becoming a unit that included him, proved harder than any of them had imagined it would in the long years of wanting him home. Kent is a man living in two timelines at once. He is in Pelican Town, at the breakfast table, in the living room, at the saloon with his wife and his sons, and he is also still in the prison camp, in the noise, in the dark, in whatever happened there that he has not fully told anyone. Loud sounds return him there without warning. The pop of popcorn, a door slamming, anything percussive, sudden, that comes from the wrong direction at the wrong moment. He has panic attacks. He holds himself with the particular tension of someone who is trying very hard to be present and knows, with the clarity that PTSD gives its sufferers, that presence is not always within his control. He loves his sons, Sam and Vincent. He does not always know how to show them that, and the gap between what he feels and what he can express is one of the most quietly heartbreaking things in the valley, visible mostly in what is absent from his interactions, in the hesitation before he speaks, in the way he watches his children with an expression that contains more than he can put into words. Sam, who spent his formative years missing a father and watching his mother manage everything alone, ended up being both younger and older than his age in different ways. Younger in his appetite for fun, in his tendency toward impulsiveness, in the way he treats each day as something to be played in rather than navigated. Older in the way he holds the household together when it needs holding, in the quiet way he watched his mother Jody manage everything and learned from her a particular kind of resilience that he does not advertise, because to advertise it would be to acknowledge the weight that required it. Jody married young, she married Kent, and they built a life, and then the war took him, and she found herself raising 2 sons in a small town, while waiting for the kind of news that comes in official envelopes, and she managed it. She managed it well, by most measures. She became expert in the logistics of family life, in the planning and the cooking and the managing of school schedules and birthday parties, and the particular social ecology of a small town. She wonders sometimes about a different kind of life. Not with regret, not with the sharp edge of genuine unhappiness, but with the soft, honest acknowledgement that she married before she knew much and has spent her adult life building inside those early choices. She is not unhappy. She's the particular kind of person who's found meaning through structure, and she has given her sons a home that works in all the ways that count. Everything about Sam is surface noise. Everything about Sebastian is quietly subterranean. He lives in the lower level of the family home on the mountain road. Not quite a basement in the cold sense, but his mother Robin's house is built into the slope of the mountain, and Sebastian's room is down, away, removed from the living spaces above, separated from the household by a set of stairs that functions as more than a physical distance. He programs, he reads, he smokes on the roof when the night is clear enough to see the stars, which in a valley this remote is most nights. He's saving money with methodical patience to move to the city, where he believes his actual life is waiting for him, conducted under conditions of greater anonymity and freer movement. A place where being the strange quiet man in the basement is not something anyone notices, because everyone is some version of that. The family situation is genuinely complicated, and the game makes no effort to hide this. Robin is his mother, and she is warm and capable, and loves him in the way of parents who have worked hard and don't always know how to slow down enough to make that love land where it needs to. But Demetrius is his stepfather, and among the honest details that the valley includes without commentary are the books on Robin and Demetrius's bedroom shelf, maximizing your second marriage, and practical tips for first-time stepdads. They are there. You can read the titles, and the titles say something about a household that is doing its best under conditions that require effort that the original configuration did not. Demetrius did not adopt Sebastian's history as fully as he adopted his role in the household. Sebastian knows this. He says once, with a flatness that carries no performance of bitterness, that Demetrius is not his real dad. It is not said in anger, which would at least be energy. It is said in the way that someone states a fact they have long since finished being hurt by, and simply carry now as context, as background, as the thing that explains the shape of certain rooms. Then there is Maru, his half-sister, Robin's daughter with Demetrius, and therefore the person in the household who belongs to all of it, in a way Sebastian does not quite. Maru does not mean to be the standard against which Sebastian is measured. She's not doing anything wrong by being bright and warm and generally beloved, but families operate through comparison whether they mean to or not. and the way Demetrius looks at Maru, with the particular unguarded pride of a parent who sees themselves reflected, is different from the way he manages Sebastian. And Sebastian has spent a long time feeling the difference, feeling like the less legible version of something, the earlier draft, the one that preceded the cleaner copy. He wishes, in his more generous moments, that it were different. He lives too far down in his own head to find a way to make it different. He keeps saving for the city. Maru is, by any measure, extraordinary, and she carries this without arrogance, which is itself a kind of achievement. She works part-time as a nurse at Harvey's clinic. She's organised, precise, quick with diagnoses, the kind of person medical practice needs, and spends the rest of her time in her room building things, inventions, robots, machinery of various experimental purposes, assembled with the patient focus that comes from genuinely loving the process of making things work, of taking components that are individually useless and combining them into something that does something in the world. She studies astronomy. She's working, among her many projects, on something designed for deep space observation. She is the sort of person who walks into a room and makes it feel like there are more possible futures than there were before she arrived. Not because she announces anything, but because her presence suggests that the gap between what exists and what is possible is smaller than you thought. She wishes she and Sebastian were closer. She says this plainly, without resentment, in a way that somehow makes the distance between them more visible than his own guardedness ever does. She's not unaware of the family's dynamics. She's simply refusing to let those dynamics make her bitter, which is a daily decision she makes without making a show of it. Harvey runs the medical clinic in the centre of Pelican Town with the focused, slightly anxious concern of a man who chose medicine because he genuinely cares whether people do well and is not entirely sure there is enough of him to cover the ground. He is the only doctor for miles in any direction. This fact sits on him in the way of a responsibility too large for one person, not exactly unbearable, but never entirely comfortable, requiring constant management. He worries about his patients, their diets, their habits, the gap between the advice he gives and the lives they actually lead, the way people avoid the clinic until something is genuinely wrong, and by then the options are narrower than they would have been. He keeps complicated hours. He finds it difficult to fully relax because relaxation requires confidence that everything is more or less handled, and in a one-doctor practice serving an entire valley, everything is never entirely handled. He wanted once to be a pilot. His eyesight was not good enough, and his fear of heights, which is not small, which is the kind of fear that produces genuine physical sympathy even in thought, was not something the profession could accommodate. Medicine is where the wanting redirected itself, which is not a small thing, to take a desire and not waste it, to find the parallel path that still leads somewhere worth going. He builds model aircraft. He keeps them in the clinic, on shelves, above the cabinet where he stores his equipment. He has a radio tuned to the frequency that pilots use, and sometimes, late at night, he listens to their voices communicating across distances he will never cross in an airplane of his own. There is something in this habit that is not quite melancholy. It is too attentive for melancholy, too present. It is more like a relationship maintained across an impossible distance, which is its own kind of fidelity. His 10-heart event involves a hot air balloon, and a man who has spent his entire life caring for others finally, for one afternoon, letting himself be afraid and doing the thing anyway. It is among the most quietly moving moments in the valley. Emily sews. This is perhaps the most accurate single sentence about her. not because it is all she is, but because it is the activity through which everything else about her flows, the activity that most fully expresses the way her mind works and what she values. She makes garments of startling colour and particular imagination, works with crystals and natural dyes and fabrics the way a painter works with a palette that she has spent years developing, and brings to the ordinary business of clothing a sense of genuine enchantment. Clothing, in Emily's understanding, is not covering, it is expression. It is the surface through which a self is communicated to the world, and she takes this seriously in a way that she does not need anyone else to validate. She dreams vividly, with images that feel meaningful to her on waking, and she follows those images into the work, into colour combinations and textures and shapes that other people might not have arrived at through reason, but that she arrives at through something she trusts more. She works evenings at the Stardrop Saloon. She is patient with people, genuinely empathetic, the kind of person who pays full attention to whoever she is talking to and makes them feel, as a result, seen in an uncommon way. She and her sister Hayley live together in their parents' house, the same house they grew up in, their parents having left for an extended, very extended, ongoing, seemingly indefinite journey around the world. Emily manages the household in their absence. She pays the bills and keeps the lights on and does the laundry, and makes sure that the structure their parents left behind does not collapse in their leaving. She does all of this without visible resentment, because she has found ways to make meaning in the daily, in the sewing, in the crystals, in the dreams, that sustain her through what might otherwise feel like an abandonment she was never asked to consent to. Her aspiration is to become a tailor, to make her practice of craft into something she can fully claim, to build something from cloth and thread that people take into their lives and carry into their futures on their bodies. There is something characteristically Emily in that ambition, the desire to make something beautiful that is also useful, that goes out into the world and keeps doing what it was made to do long after she's put down the needle. Hayley, when you first encounter her, is not easy to like. She is given to a kind of casual thoughtlessness, not malice, but the particular carelessness of someone who has spent most of her life surrounded by people who rewarded her appearance more than her attention, who never gave her strong reason to look more carefully at how her words landed. She was the popular girl, in whatever small-town version of that story applies here, the one whose social success was aesthetic and relational rather than substantive, built on the acknowledgement of others and sustained by their continued willingness to acknowledge. She's self-aware enough to know that this shaped her in ways she does not entirely like, that it made her mean sometimes, in the offhand way that people are mean when they have enough social capital that they do not think about the cost. She uses that self-awareness unevenly. On some days it makes her kinder, on others it just makes her self-conscious about the same tendencies. Her parents left. She does not say this often in so many words, but the leaving is the fact underneath most of her personality, the gravitational centre that the rest of her orbits without quite acknowledging. She was given the freedom to be whatever she wanted in the absence of anyone to help her figure out what that might be. She and Emily filled in for each other, imperfectly, each of them carrying a share of the household and a share of the grief of being left, but they are different enough in disposition that they fill it differently. Hayley turned, eventually, to photography. She is genuinely talented, with a good eye for light and composition, and the particular quality of stillness that a photograph requires from the person who takes it. The camera gave her a way of looking at the world that felt less passive than how she had been looking at it before, a way that required her to be present and attentive and to decide what was worth preserving. She's still figuring out what that is. She is still, in many ways, becoming herself, and the Valley is patient enough to let that happen. She and Alex were what might be called kings of high school social life, in some small-town version of that particular story. The athlete and the pretty girl, whose status depended on a social structure that had walls and a calendar and an end date. And then it ended, as it always does, and the kingdom turned out to have been a very particular-sized thing. Alex lives with his grandparents, George and Evelyn, in the house near the town square. He is large and athletic and presents himself as a person of easy confidence, of good-natured surface certainty about his dreams and his abilities and his future. He trains constantly, push-ups, weights, whatever is available, in service of a dream of becoming a professional gridball player, which is the sport the Ferngill Republic loves the way distant real-world countries love their own native games, with the intensity of cultural identity, with heroes and statistics and children who grow up knowing who the great players are. He speaks about his gridball ambitions the way a person speaks about the thing that keeps hope intact, with insistence, a little too much of it, as if the repetition itself is doing work that conviction alone cannot fully accomplish. He needs to say it again. As long as he is saying it, it is real. His mother died when he was young. Not dramatically, not in any way the game makes spectacular, but the way mothers die when they are too young, and their children are too young to understand why, and the world does not offer a satisfying explanation. She died of an illness. The details are not fully given, because some details don't need to be given, because the shape of the loss is more important than its particulars. His father, after that, was abusive. The grandparents, George and Evelyn, his mother's parents, took him in, and so Alex grew up in a household where he was genuinely loved, where an old woman tended her garden and an old man watched television from a wheelchair, and both of them did what they could to make the love visible. But underneath the love, always, the memory of what came before it. The reason he was here instead of elsewhere. He put everything into gridball because gridball is a place where effort is visible and rewarded in measurable ways, where the score is clear, where what you put in and what you get out have a relationship that ordinary life, with its smaller griefs and more opaque rules and pain that arrives without warning or logic, has stopped providing. He does not talk about his mother easily. When he does, it is with a rawness that breaks through a surface he has spent years making smooth, and the rawness is all the more striking for the contrast. He wants people to know he is fine. He is not always fine. This does not make him unusual. It makes him human. George does not leave the house much. He is old and grumpy and sits in his wheelchair with the expression of a man who has decided that the world has disappointed him, often enough that he is entitled to say so, and who is not going to waste energy softening that assessment for the comfort of people who haven't earned it. He says difficult things. He is prickly with strangers and impatient with noise, and dismissive of things he does not understand or cannot access in his current state. And underneath all of this, and it does not take long to find it really, if you are willing to sit with the prickliness, is a person who has simply been through a great deal and who has developed, as people do who have been through a great deal, a thicker outer surface and a softer interior in inverse proportion. Over 30 years ago, George was working in the local coal mines when an accident occurred. He slipped while setting off dynamite. He lost the use of his legs as a result, and has used a wheelchair ever since. A fact that he does not perform, that he does not apologise for, and that he does not allow to define the whole of him, even as it defines the circumstances of most of his days. He is sensitive about his autonomy. When Penny, the kind young woman who sometimes passes through the area, moves his wheelchair without asking him first, he becomes genuinely upset, not for theatrical reasons, not because he is looking for a grievance, but because there are few things more fundamental to the dignity of someone in his position than the decision about where they are and when they move, and being moved without consultation is a removal of that decision by someone who presumes to know better. This is the kind of thing that sounds small from the outside and means everything from inside. Evelyn has been with him through all of it. She has lived in Pelican Town her entire life, which gives her a relationship to the valley that is different in character from the people who came later. She does not experience it as a destination arrived at, but as the ground she has always stood on. She's a woman of warmth and resilience, a gardener who tends her plants with the same steady, patient attention she gives to everything, and who has spent enough decades alongside George to have developed the particular fluency of long partnership, in which most communication happens in shorthand, and the full sentences are reserved for the things that still require them. She remembers the day she and George met. It was at the ice festival, and he threw a snowball at her, aimed, intentional, not an accident, and then, immediately overwhelmed by what he had just done, and unsure how to follow through on the action, came over to check that she was all right. She has never stopped finding this funny. She probably never will. It is the kind of love story that is too ordinary to make a film about, and too specific to fully belong to anyone outside it. She worries about his lungs. She wishes he would spend less time watching television. She says these things quietly, and he grumbles in response. And this is the dialect of their particular love, a language built from decades of wanting the same thing for each other, even when they cannot agree on what that thing is. Penny lives in a trailer at the edge of Pelican Town with her mother Pam. The trailer is small enough that the two of them are always aware of each other's presence, always within earshot of each other's evenings, always inside each other's peripheral vision. Pam makes it smaller, not through cruelty. Pam is not cruel, not in her intentions, not in the core of what she would want if she had the clarity to want freely, but through the expansive, involuntary need of addiction, which takes up more space than the person who carries it. Pam drinks. She drinks most evenings at the Stardrop Saloon, where Gus serves her with the carefully neutral kindness he applies to all situations, running up a tab that Penny is quietly aware of and quietly managing around. She drinks sometimes at home. The money this requires is money that Penny works around with the patience of someone who learned earlier than children should, that the only reliable thing is her own reliability. Penny teaches. There is no school in Pelican Town, no formal institution, no established curriculum, no building with a bell and a flag. And so Penny has simply taken it upon herself to educate the town's two young children, Jas and Vincent, in the library of the town, under trees in good weather, anywhere that works on any given day. She teaches them reading and arithmetic and the kind of general knowledge that children need to build the world from. She is patient in this the way she is patient in everything, not with the performance of patience, not with the self-congratulatory grace of someone tolerating something beneath them, but with genuine love for the process of watching children learn, genuine pleasure in the moment when understanding arrives on a small face. Teaching is the thing she chose for herself, perhaps the clearest thing she ever chose, without it being shaped by necessity or by someone else's needs. It is hers. She reads for escape. She has books from the library worn thin from use, read and reread, offering her the particular service of fiction, which is the ability to be somewhere else entirely while remaining in the trailer. She has a deep, quiet, honest longing for a different kind of life, not an ungrateful longing, not one that dismisses what she has, but the soft acknowledgement that the life she lives has been shaped significantly by her mother's choices, by the weight of addiction falling on the person closest to the person carrying it. She is not resigned. She is saving herself slowly, with the patience of someone who knows the process is long and has decided to begin it anyway. Pam drove the bus that connected Pelican Town to the Calico Desert. This is the fact about Pam that is easy to miss and important to hold. She had a job. She had a route. She drove a bus through the desert with the particular competence of someone for whom the mechanical reliability of a vehicle and a schedule provided a structure that the rest of her life was not consistently offering. When the bus broke down and the route stopped running, she lost that structure. This saloon filled in where the schedule had been. She is not a villain in this story. She is a person who has had more difficulty than she had resources to manage, and the alcohol became the way she managed the gap. And now the gap and the alcohol are so thoroughly entangled in each other that it is difficult to say with any certainty which is cause and which is effect. She has a good heart. The town's travelling merchant passes through, and she knows the roads, the distances, the particular quality of the desert at certain hours of certain seasons. She is still, underneath the evenings at the saloon, the person who drove that route. At the ranch on the outskirts of Pelican Town, Marnie keeps animals, cows and sheep and goats and chickens and whatever the season calls for, all attended to with a genuine, uncomplicated love that makes the work feel less like labour and more like company. She is Shane's aunt. She is Jazz's aunt, the sister of Jazz's mother, who is gone. She is the animal woman, the person the town goes to when something goes wrong at the barn, and she fills this role not because it was assigned to her, but because she is genuinely built for it, because caring for things is not what she does but what she is. She is in love with Lewis, Pelican Town's mayor. She's been in love with him for a long time, which is both a private and a public fact in the particular way that small towns make things simultaneously both. Lewis lives in the mayor's residence not far from the town square. He and Marnie see each other regularly. Everyone in town who is paying attention at all knows that they are together in some meaningful sense. And yet Lewis refuses, with a firmness that he maintains out of what he believes to be dignity, but which might be more accurately called fear, to make the relationship officially known. He is conscious of his position, of the town's regard for him, of what he imagines people would think, and he has arranged his care for Marnie inside that concern rather than alongside it. She waits. She keeps waiting. She tends the animals and she is good at it, and she loves him, and she keeps that love in the same space as the chickens and the goats among the living things she maintains. Lewis has served as mayor of Pelican Town for long enough that his tenure has become part of the town's landscape, as much a feature of the place as the mountains or the beach. He presides over festivals with genuine enthusiasm: the egg hunt, the flower dance, the luau, the fair, the Spirit's Eve, the ice festival. And these events are not mere ceremony to him. They are the occasions through which community cohesion is maintained, through which people in the same place are reminded of why being in the same place matters. He knows everyone by name. He knows the history of the town's buildings, the story of its bridges, the particular frustrations of its residents, the long-term challenges it faces. He is a good mayor in the technical sense, attentive to the needs of the community, mediating conflicts with the practiced neutrality of someone who has been doing this long enough to have developed useful instincts. His vanity is real but not dominant. He cares about how he appears because appearance for a figure of local authority is part of the function. His relationship with Marnie sits in a permanent, uncomfortable suspension that he has arranged to his satisfaction, and that is not, if one is being honest about it, fair to her. He is fond of her. There is genuine warmth in how he treats her, in the small attentions he pays, in the consideration he maintains in private. But fondness and fairness are not the same thing, and he has lived long enough in the gap between them that he has stopped noticing it has a shape. Shane lives at Marnie's ranch. He works at Jojamart, the corporate store that positioned itself at the edge of the valley with the efficiency and imperviousness to local feeling characteristic of corporate stores everywhere, in the specific numbing way that people work at places they have no investment in, passing the hours by making themselves as small as possible inside them, waiting for the shift to end with the patience of someone who has learned that most of the day is something to be managed rather than lived. He drinks. He drinks at the Star Drop Saloon most evenings, building a consistent presence that is not about enjoyment, but about the particular chemistry of numbing. And he drinks at home, and the drinking is not incidental to his situation. It is the situation, or at least it is the form the situation has taken in the absence of other forms. He is the godfather of jazz, and this is the first thing to understand about Shane before any other single thing. Jass's parents were his closest friends. They died. The details, as with Alex's mother, are not made extraordinary by the game, because there is no ordinary way for the closest friends you have to die, and making it dramatic would be to get the scale of it wrong. After they were gone, Jazz had no one who was not Shane or Marnie. He absorbed her into his life with the reflexive completeness of someone who does not even stop to consider the alternative, and the two of them moved in with Marnie because he could not manage alone with a child and a grief that had not yet fully formed a shape he could recognize, let alone carry. He loves her in the way that people love the thing that is keeping them tethered when everything else has let go. He is ferociously protective of her. He wants to teach her what he knows about chickens, the secret blue chickens he keeps in a corner of the ranch, tended with a care that preceded the rest of his recovery by some time, before therapy or sparkling water or any of the later choices. These chickens were something alive that needed him every day. He shows someone, eventually, those chickens. He talks about passing on his knowledge to Jazz. The chickens are not a metaphor, but they are not nothing either. There is a moment, the kind of moment that defines a person's arc, when Shane ends up at a cliff at a very low point, drunk, alone, somewhere past the limit. Someone comes looking for him. They find him. They take him to Harvey's clinic, and Harvey speaks plainly about what he is seeing, without dramatics, without condescension, in the calm, clear way of a doctor who knows that clarity is often the most compassionate thing available. Shane agrees to therapy. He begins, with none of the fanfare of transformation narratives, the quiet daily work of choosing to stay. He cuts back on the alcohol. He starts drinking sparkling water in place of beer. He sits with Jazz in the farm evenings. He becomes, slowly and without announcement, someone who is building a life rather than escaping one. Jazz is young enough that the full weight of what she has lost has not yet settled into its permanent shape. She knows her parents are gone. She understands this in the way that children understand things that are too large for childhood, as a fact among facts, present and real, without the full emotional amplitude that will come later when she has the vocabulary for it. She knows Shane is her godfather and that Marnie is her aunt, and that she lives here now, on this ranch, with these animals and this routinized grief that the adults around her are still moving through themselves. She plays with Vincent, who is the closest thing to a peer she has in Pelican Town, and attends Penny's informal lessons with the particular seriousness of a child who has learned, earlier than most, that things end, and who has decided that paying full attention to what is here while it is here is the appropriate response to that knowledge. She loves fairy tales. She loves the idea of worlds where magic is the organizing principle. where strange and beautiful things happen and mean something beyond accident or misfortune, where the rules are different and the endings are earned. There is perhaps something in this that is not difficult to understand for anyone who has sat with what she has had to sit with. Vincent is Sam's younger brother. He's a child, fully and without qualification, carrying the particular lightness of someone who is still young enough to be insulated from most of what is difficult in the town around him. He is loud and curious and chases everything with the enthusiastic imprecision of a young person who has not yet learned to curate his energy. He will not be this light forever. The valley will give him what it gives everyone, enough time in it to become complicated. But right now he is here, bright and uncomplicated, and this is its own small gift, the grace of a child who has not yet been asked to carry too much. Clint, the town's blacksmith, keeps the forge burning through most of the day with the practiced efficiency of a man who knows his tools and his trade and has spent enough years with them to require no particular enthusiasm to do the work well. He upgrades tools that the farmer and others bring him. He cracks geodes. He processes ore into bars. He is good at what he does, which is the unambiguous part of Clint, the part that proceeds without complication. He is considerably less good at the parts of life that happen outside the forge, and most of the difficulty centres on a single, persistent, unresolved fact. Clint is in love with Emily. He has been in love with Emily for what appears to be a very long time, long enough that the feeling has become structural rather than situational. Not an emotion he experiences so much as an orientation he lives inside. He cannot do anything about it. This is not for want of desire. The desire is obvious. It is not for want of opportunity. Emily is accessible, kind, a regular at the saloon where Clint himself sometimes goes. It is for want of a functional path between wanting and acting on wanting, which his fear of rejection has closed off with such thoroughness that even with help, even when he asks for assistance setting up a situation in which he might simply spend an evening with her, and that help is provided and the situation is created, he retreats. He goes far enough to ask for help and not far enough to use it. He is not a bad person. He is a person in whom the fear of rejection has calcified into something so structural that it has effectively replaced the thing it was originally protecting, so that what he has now in place of the risk of not getting what he wants is simply not having what he wants, which is less preferable but feels somehow safer. He is lonely. This is the central fact of his daily existence. He knows it. He is not unaware of it. He continues to live inside it with a kind of grim patience that is either admirable or heartbreaking depending on the angle from which you look at it. Demetrius is a scientist. More specifically, he is a researcher focused on the biological ecology of the valley, its organisms, its habitats, the ways that the living systems of this particular place interact with each other, and with the history that the valley carries underground and in its soil. He is methodical and careful, and cares about accuracy with the intensity of a person whose professional identity is built on it, who cannot afford to be imprecise, and has, over time, developed a slight impatience with imprecision in others. He's devoted to Maru in the unguarded way of a parent who sees themselves clearly and happily reflected in a child. It is not blind love, it is loving recognition. With Sebastian, he is less fluent. He met Sebastian when Sebastian already was someone, already had a personality and a history and a way of being in the world that Demetrius had played no part in forming. There are books on the bedroom shelf. Maximizing your second marriage. Practical tips for first-time stepdads. He tried. He read books. The gap between effort and outcome is, in this as in many things, observable. Robin, his wife, is built for early mornings, which is one of the reasons her workshop is almost always lit before the town is fully awake. She is the valley's carpenter, the person who builds and repairs structures, who knows the valley's buildings from the inside out, who can look at a wall and tell you what it would take to move it or replace it or make it into something else. She is confident in the way of people who've been skilled at something long enough to stop needing external validation of that skill. She raised Sebastian alone for long enough that the shape of those years is still present in both of them. A kind of intimacy that has calcified partly into competence and partly into a gap they cannot fully bridge now that the household includes more people. She loves her family. The way she loves them is practical. She builds things, repairs things, maintains the structures of their lives with the same care she gives to the valley's physical structures. She is not a stillness person. Stillness does not suit her. There is always something that needs doing, and she would rather be the one doing it. Linus lives on the mountainside above the town, in a tent he's made into something like a home. Not a compromised version of a home, not a camp that is waiting to be converted into permanent shelter, but a genuine one, shaped to his needs and maintained with the resourcefulness of someone who has made a choice and followed it through. He forages. He observes the natural world with the particular attention of someone who is rarely distracted by the noise of constructed environments, who has time to notice what is there because he has not filled the day with things that prevent noticing. He is calm in the very specific way of people who have removed most of the extraneous noise from their daily existence, and found, in the silence on the other side, a quality of awareness that other people spend their whole lives trying to approximate with meditation or rural weekends or expensive retreats. He chose this. That is the thing that the town finds most difficult to accommodate, because the narrative they have ready for someone living in a tent on a mountainside is a narrative of misfortune, of having arrived there by force rather than by decision. Linus is there because he decided to be, because the wilderness fits him in a way that walls and schedules and the constant social management of town life never manage to. He has knowledge of the natural world, of plants and animals and the particular signs that the seasons leave on the landscape, that he holds with the quiet confidence of someone who did not acquire it through study but through presence. Through years of sustained attention to the world he has chosen to live inside. Some of the townspeople treat him with suspicion. Some find his choices threatening in the way that genuine alternatives to the standard mode of living tend to be threatening. He receives this with equanimity, not performing ease, not concealing hurt, but simply continuing to be what he is in the place where he has decided to be it. He and the farmer develop a real friendship, quiet and specific, built on mutual respect for the knowledge that different kinds of living hold. Below the valley's surface, beneath the Pelican Town that goes about its seasons in the ordinary air, the mines descend into the mountain. Deep enough, past the iron and the gold and the increasingly dangerous levels, there lives the dwarf, an ancient creature, one of the last of a people so old that the written record of them is fragmentary and strange, scattered through lost books that the valley has buried in its soil, and its treasure chests and its hidden corners. They call themselves the Smoluanu, the Sky People. This is a name that requires some explanation, because the dwarf has lived underground long enough that the sky is largely theoretical, a thing of distant memory, a feature of the world above that the dwarves have not been a significant part of for longer than any record clearly shows. The lost books scattered through the valley contain a hypothesis, advanced by a researcher named M. Jasper, that the dwarves arrived on this world not as native inhabitants, but as something else, something that came from another place. a world with a denser atmosphere that protected them from stellar radiation in ways that the valley's open sky does not, and that their original form, their biology, has been shaped by millennia of underground living into something substantially different from what they began as. They burrowed, they adapted, they became the mineral people, the forge people, the underground people. But they called themselves the sky people because the sky was the last place they had been fully themselves, the origin they were trying to hold on to even as it receded. The dwarf who remains in the mines is the last, or nearly the last. They are guarded, not hostile to the farmer, once communication is possible. And communication requires real effort, requires the 4 dwarvish scrolls scattered through the mine levels, requires enough commitment to the dwarf's world to learn the shape of it, but guarded in the way of someone who has had enough loss to make openness a considered decision rather than a natural state. The dwarves and the shadow people, the creatures that live in the tunnels and in the dark places below the mines, have been at war for approximately 1,000 years, the Elemental Wars, a conflict that began when the dwarves attempted to drive the shadow people from the underground homes they had made their own, and the shadow people, pressed out of the only refuge available to being sensitive to light, fought back with the violence of those who have nothing left to lose from violence. Both sides lost immensely. The war went on long enough for multiple generations of both peoples to be born inside it, to know nothing but the war, to have no living memory of the time before. The dwarf in the mines lost their entire family to that conflict. Every family member. They carry this with the kind of grief that has had so long to settle that it has become simply part of the structure of who they are, the way that geological pressure becomes part of the rock. In the sewers beneath Pelican Town, accessible only to those who have obtained the rusty key, given by Gunther the museum curator in recognition of enough donated artifacts, lives Krobus. He is a shadow person, one of the people the dwarf holds responsible for the deaths of everyone they have ever loved, and he is, among all of his kind, the singular exception. The only shadow person who has chosen proximity to humans rather than opposition, trade rather than attack, presence rather than concealment. He calls himself by a name that, in the language of his people, means bridge crosser. He chose that name deliberately, with the full understanding of what it meant to be the kind of thing that crosses bridges, which is the kind of thing that exists between two sides and belongs entirely to neither. The shadow people originated in the void, another realm, another place, separate from the physical world of the valley, and came to this plane long ago after what Krobus describes as a great catastrophe that made the void uninhabitable or at least untenable for his people. They crossed over and found the underground and made it home, because they are sensitive to sunlight, because the surface was not survivable for them in the way it is survivable for humans and for the farmer who walks through the mines without a second thought. They built their lives in the dark. The dwarves had built theirs there first. The proximity inevitably became conflict, and the conflict became 1,000 years of war. Krobus acknowledges that his people can be violent. He does not apologize for it exactly. This is the important nuance of his character, but he contextualizes it, explains that the shadow people fought because they were driven from what had become their home, because the alternative was extinction. He considers the creatures in the mines his kin. He says this plainly. He does not pretend that because he has chosen a different path, the path his people took was wrong in the simple way. He sells goods in the sewers, rare things, void things, items that come from the darker parts of the world and whose usefulness is real regardless of their origin. And he does this in the spirit of someone who has decided that commerce is one bridge, that trade is one way two peoples can stand on the same ground without one of them needing to destroy the other. If the farmer builds enough trust with both Krobus and the dwarf, if they have walked far enough into each of their stories to earn the confidence of both, which requires patience and sustained presence and the kind of relationship building that cannot be rushed, something happens. Krobus and the dwarf are brought together in the sewers. The wizard comes to witness. He tells them that the elemental wars have ended, not that the hurt has ended, not that the 1,000 years of loss can be retroactively undone, but that the conflict as an ongoing present tense thing is over, and that what they owe each other now is the possibility of coexistence. He casts a seal of promise between them, a binding, and the three of them stand in the dim light of the underground, and something is acknowledged that is not forgiveness, but is not nothing, is the beginning of something that cannot proceed unless witnessed, and the wizard has come to provide the witnessing. Across the valley, among all the lives that Pelican Town holds, there are the children. Jas and Vincent, who attend Penny's lessons and play together in the afternoons, who are growing up in a community that is imperfect and small and full of people trying. There is also Sandy, who runs the Oasis shop in the Calico Desert to the far north, accessible when the bus route runs again. She's cheerful in the specific way of someone who has chosen optimism as a practice, who has found that maintaining warmth in a remote posting takes active effort, and has decided to make that effort rather than go the other way. She's given herself a life that is small and self-contained and surprising in its satisfactions, stocked with the rare and the unusual, the products of desert trade, the goods that come from far enough away to seem exotic even to a valley that has seen stranger things than most. The travelling merchant appears at the southern edge of Cindersap Forest on certain days, in a cart pulled by pigs, selling items of wildly varying origin and purpose. She mentions that some of her stock is smuggled from the Gatoro Empire, that distant southern nation with which the Ferngill Republic has been at war, which is the war that took Kent and marked Jodie, and left Sam missing a father, during the years when fathers are hardest to miss. The war exists in the valley only at the edges, in Kent's hands when they shake without reason, in Sam's memories of a house too quiet, in the war mementos that surface as buried artifacts when the farmer turns over the soil of a valley that has seen more history than its current residents know, and carries that history in layers the way all old land does. There is the community centre, which sat empty and deteriorating before the farmer arrived, and which can be restored, room by room, bundle by bundle, with the contributions of someone willing to pay attention to what the valley needs and is not getting. The Junimos live there, small, round, ghostly beings of the forest who are connected to the magical life of the valley in ways that the wizard understands better than anyone else in town, and who emerge in gratitude when the community centre is given back the purpose it was built for. They are not fully explained. They do not need to be. They are the particular kind of presence that a world needs to have, the sign that there are things going on in the deeper life of a place that its residents are not fully privy to, that magic is not remarkable because it is magic, but because it is faithful, because it has been there the whole time, waiting to be noticed. And there is the community itself, which is not fully captured by any one of its members, and is not fully captured by all of them together. It is George's gruffness, and Evelyn's tenderness, and the way they hold each other up across decades of difference. It is Willie casting a line before sunrise, when the water is still, and the most honest version of the morning is available to anyone willing to be awake for it. It is Elliot at his writing desk working on sentences that may or may not be good but are definitely sincere, and the piano keys he goes back to when the sentences fail him. It is Robin hammering in the workshop before anyone else has thought to be awake, and Harvey listening to pilot communications on a radio that will never call his name, and Demetrius measuring something carefully in a laboratory while the rest of the household is quiet. It is Abigail sitting in the rain with a damp book about the occult, genuinely untroubled by the rain or by anyone's opinion of her reading material, present in the way of people who are exactly who they are without remainder. It is Sebastian on the rooftop in the dark, smoking, thinking, saving money, holding on to the idea that there is a city somewhere with enough room in it for whatever he is trying to become. It is Penny teaching 2 children under a tree, finding the exact right words to make something complicated simple, and Jas listening with the particular gravity of someone who has already learned that some things are worth paying attention to. Pelican Town does not pretend to be extraordinary. It is too small for that kind of claim, too honest about its own modesty, too full of people who know each other's business to sustain the kind of mythology that extraordinary places require. What it is instead is the kind of place where the ordinary goes all the way down, where, if you're patient enough to stay through a few seasons, patient enough to return the same greeting every morning, and notice when the greetings change, you begin to understand that what looked like a surface was always a depth. Every face in the morning has a history behind it. Every routine was once a decision made for a reason that still echoes in how the person moves, in what they avoid, in what they reach for without thinking. Every person here has arrived through something, through loss or ambition or flight, or simply the long accumulation of small choices that deposit a person somewhere and say, this is where you are now, and is still, quietly, in the process of arriving somewhere further. The seasons turn around all of them. Spring comes green and bright and smelling of soil that has been waiting, full of seeds and the particular hopefulness that planting requires. Summer comes slow and warm, the light staying later than expected, the days stretching into evenings that the saloon fills with conversation. Autumn arrives golden and leaning slightly toward melancholy, the harvest season that the valley has always known how to honour. The time of year when what has been grown is brought in, and the preparation for cold begins. And then winter, still and white, with the kind of clean, uncluttered silence that only comes when snow has covered most of the reasons for noise. Each year the same pattern, each year not the same. Each year the people in it a little change from who they were when the pattern last came through, and a little more, somehow, themselves. This is what the valley is. Not a place you pass through, not a backdrop, not a setting. A place you slow down inside of until the pace of it becomes your own pace, until you find that what you thought was a small world was actually a very full one, holding, with a care that does not announce itself but is always present, all of these lives, all of this history, all of this ordinary human effort to make something worth having, in a world that does not owe you that but gives it anyway, in the right valley, in the right season, if you are willing to stay. Good night.